38, I let my Amish wife be blamed for my secret relationship. Rebecca stopped setting a place for me at supper on a Tuesday in October. She did not announce it. She did not raise her voice or explain. I came in from the barn, washed my hands at the basin, and sat down to find the table set for three, herself and our two daughters. My plate, my glass, my fork. None of them were there. She served the girls their potatoes and gravy without looking in my direction. Our oldest, Miriam, who was 9, glanced at the empty space in front of me and then back at her mother. Rebecca said, "Eat your supper," that was all. I stood up, walked to the cabinet, and got my own plate. I ate standing at the counter like a stranger passing through someone else's kitchen. I was 31 years old, and I deserved far worse than a missing plate. My name is Joseph. I was born in 1971 in a small settlement in northern Indiana, one of those districts where the farms sit so close together that your neighbor can hear your rooster before you do. I married Rebecca Lapp when I was 22 and she was 19. She was the second daughter of a cabinet maker. A quiet woman with steady hands and a way of watching people that made you feel she understood more than she would ever say aloud. I loved her in the way young Amish men are taught to love, practically, protectively, and without too many words. I believed that would be enough. For nearly 8 years it was. The woman I kept secret was named Clara. She was not from our district. She had grown up old order in a community outside of Shipshewana and had left during her Rumspringa, returned, been baptized, then left again after her first husband died. By the time I met her, she was living in a small rented house at the edge of the nearest English town, working at a fabric store, attending no church, belonging to no one. She was 34 to my 29. I met her because I was picking up harness leather from a shop 2 doors down from where she worked, and she was standing outside on a break, and she asked me whether I knew where to find good sewing machine oil in bulk. It was a normal question. I gave her a normal answer. I should have walked away and never thought of her again. I did not walk away. Over the following months, I found reasons to visit that town more often than necessary. A bolt I needed, a part for the plow, lumber I could have bought closer to home. Each trip I would stop near the fabric store, and Clara would be there, and we would talk. She told me about her late husband, about the silence of living alone, about how strange it felt to stand in a grocery store and choose between 15 kinds of cereal when she had spent most of her life eating oatmeal. She laughed easily, and I had forgotten what it felt like to make someone laugh. Rebecca did not laugh often. That was not a flaw in her, it was simply who she was, but I used it as a justification, and that was a flaw in me. By the spring of 1994, I was visiting Clara's house, not every week, sometimes twice a month. I told Rebecca I was helping an English neighbor repair fencing, or that I had been asked to bid on a cabinetry job in the next town. Rebecca never questioned me. She trusted me entirely, and I leaned on that trust the way a man leans on a fence post, carelessly, until the wood cracks. Nothing between Clara and me was innocent, but I will say this, it was quieter than people would imagine. We sat in her kitchen, she made coffee. We talked about our childhoods, about faith, about the weight of being raised in a system that decides who you are before you learn to speak. Sometimes I held her hand, sometimes more. I will not describe it further. What matters is that I had a life with her that Rebecca did not know about, and I protected that life with lies that grew heavier every month. The first person who suspected was not Rebecca, it was my younger brother Eli. He had seen my buggy parked near Clara's Road on a Saturday when I was supposed to be at a livestock auction. He did not confront me directly. Instead, he came to our house one Sunday afternoon and sat with Rebecca while I was in the barn. When I came inside, the conversation stopped. Rebecca looked at me the way she sometimes looked at a crooked shelf, measuring something, deciding whether it was worth fixing. Eli left shortly after. That night, Rebecca asked me how the auction had gone. I described it in detail I had rehearsed. She nodded. She did not ask again. But Eli had planted something. Not in Rebecca, in himself. He began watching me, tracking my trips, noting when my explanations did not align with the calendar. Eli was not cruel. He loved me. He also loved the church, and he believed that a man living in deception was a man walking toward destruction. He told me later that he prayed about it for 3 weeks before deciding what to do. I believe him. I also believe that what he did was the act that broke my family apart, not because he was wrong to act, but because he chose the wrong target. Eli went to our bishop, a man named Amos Graber, who had led the district since before I was born. Eli did not name Clara. He did not have enough information for that. What he told Bishop Graber was that he believed something was wrong in my household, that I had been absent frequently, that I seemed distracted and secretive. He framed it as concern for my marriage. Bishop Graber thanked him and said he would handle it quietly. What Bishop Graber did was visit Rebecca. He came on a Wednesday morning when I was away, delivering furniture to a customer. He sat at our kitchen table, accepted coffee, and asked Rebecca whether she was happy in her marriage, whether she had been keeping her duties, whether she had perhaps formed any attachment outside the home that might be drawing her attention away from her husband and children. Rebecca told me later, much later, that she had not understood at first. She thought the bishop was offering pastoral comfort. It was only when he asked whether she had been seen speaking with any men from outside the community that she realized she was being questioned, not counseled. Rebecca had done nothing. She had never spoken to a man outside our family with anything more than a polite greeting at a store. She had not left the district alone in months. She had spent her days raising our girls, tending the garden, sewing clothes, and preparing meals for a husband who was lying to her face. But Bishop Graber did not ask those follow-up questions. He had received a report that something was wrong in the household, and in our district, when something was wrong in a household, the first person examined was the wife. I learned about the visit only because Miriam mentioned it. The bishop came and talked to Mama for a long time, she said while I was braiding her hair for bed. My stomach dropped. I found Rebecca in the sewing room. She was hemming a dress, and her stitches were so tight the fabric puckered. I asked her what Bishop Graber had wanted. She said, "He wanted to know if I was being a good wife." Her voice was flat. She did not look up. I said, "What did you tell him?" She said, "I told him I was trying. I should have gone to Bishop Graber that night. I should have confessed everything. Clara, the visits, the lies. Instead, I told myself that the inquiry would pass, that Eli's suspicion would fade, that if I simply stopped visiting Clara for a few weeks, the attention would shift elsewhere. I was a coward, and cowardice is not a single decision. It is a direction. Once you walk it, every step makes the next one easier. I did stop visiting Clara. For 5 weeks I stayed home every evening, helped with the children, repaired things around the house I had been neglecting. Rebecca softened. She set my place at the table again. She even smiled one Sunday morning when I handed her a bundle of wildflowers the girls and I had picked. I thought the danger had passed. I thought I had corrected the situation without anyone being hurt. Then Clara sent a letter. She addressed it to our household. Not to me, to the household. The envelope had no return address, but the handwriting was clearly a woman's. Rebecca was the one who collected the mail. She opened it, because in our home, mail belonged to the family. Inside was a single page. Clara had written that she missed our conversations, that she hoped I was well, that she understood if I needed time, but wanted me to know she would be waiting. She did not sign her full name. She signed it only with the letter C. Rebecca read it before I came in from the field. She was sitting at the kitchen table with the letter flat in front of her, both hands pressed against the wood on either side of it, as if she were holding down something that might fly away. When I walked in, she pushed the letter toward me and said, "Who is C?" I had perhaps 3 seconds to tell the truth, 3 seconds in which my entire marriage, my family, my standing in the community, and Rebecca's dignity all hung in the air like a glass someone had knocked off a shelf. In those 3 seconds, I did the worst thing I have ever done. I said, "I don't know." Then I picked up the letter, read it as though I were seeing it for the first time, and said, "This must be for someone else. Maybe it was delivered to the wrong address." Rebecca stared at me. She wanted to believe me. I could see the effort it cost her. She looked down at the envelope. at our family name written clearly on the front, and she said, "It has our name on it, Joseph." I said, "Someone is confused, or maybe someone is trying to cause trouble." I paused. Then I said, "And I will carry the shame of this sentence to my grave. Maybe someone is trying to make it look like you've been receiving letters from outside the community." I watched the understanding move across her face. I had not accused her directly. I had done something worse. I had suggested that the letter, the bishop's visit, the suspicion, all of it might be pointing at her, that she was the one who would need to defend herself. And because she had no secret, because she had nothing to hide, she accepted the burden of proof without realizing I had placed it there. Within 2 weeks, the whisper had traveled. Eli heard about the letter. Bishop Graber heard about the letter. Rebecca's own mother heard that a mysterious woman's letter had arrived at the house. And because the bishop had already visited Rebecca, not me, the framework was already in place. The community assumed the problem was hers. Women in the district began treating her differently. They were not openly hostile, but the warmth disappeared. Conversations shortened. Invitations to quilting circles stopped arriving. Rebecca's mother came to the house and asked her, with tears in her eyes, whether she had done something to jeopardize her family. Rebecca wept that night. She sat on the edge of our bed and wept silently, with her hands covering her mouth so the girls would not hear. I sat beside her and put my arm around her shoulders. I comforted her. I told her it would pass. I told her people would see the truth eventually. I held my wife while she cried over a wound I had inflicted, and I said nothing. Clara, meanwhile, grew worried by my silence. She sent a second letter, this time to a P.O. box I had rented months earlier, which I checked during my trips to town. In it she asked whether I was all right, whether my wife had found out, whether I wanted her to come to the district and explain to someone that I had done nothing wrong. That last part nearly stopped my heart. I wrote back immediately, telling her to send nothing more, to stay away, that everything was under control. I told her I still cared for her but needed time. I was managing everyone, Rebecca, Clara, Eli, the bishop, like a man spinning plates, and I believed I was skilled enough to keep them all in the air. I was not. Eli came to me directly in late November. We were alone in my workshop. He closed the door and said, "Joseph, I know Rebecca is not the one with the secret." I set down the chisel I was holding, because my hand had begun to tremble. He said, "I saw your buggy near that woman's road 3 different times last spring. I did not tell the bishop it was you, because I wanted to give you the chance to confess on your own, but you let them question Rebecca instead." His voice was not angry, it was grieving. He looked at me the way a father looks at a son who has disappointed him beyond words. I asked Eli what he wanted me to do. He said, "Tell the truth. Go to Bishop Graber. Clear Rebecca's name." I told him I would. I told him I needed a few days to find the right words. He said, "You have had months to find the right words, Joseph. Every day you wait, Rebecca pays more." He was right. I knew he was right. And still I waited. I waited because I was afraid. Afraid of shunning. Afraid of losing my children. Afraid of seeing Rebecca's face when she understood not only that I had betrayed her, but that I had let her take the blame. Fear is not an excuse, but it is an explanation, and I owe at least that much honesty now. It was Rebecca who forced the truth into the open. She had begun, quietly, to investigate on her own. She had asked our neighbor Martha whether anyone had seen Joseph behaving unusually during the spring. Martha, who had no reason to protect me, told Rebecca that she had once seen my buggy turning onto the English road toward town on a Saturday morning when I had told Rebecca I was going to the mill. Rebecca checked the mill's records. I had not been there that day. She confronted me on a Thursday evening after the girls were asleep. She placed 3 things on the table: Clara's letter, a note she had written listing the dates I had claimed to be at the mill or the auction or the neighbor's farm, and a small receipt she had found in my coat pocket from the fabric store in town, dated on a day I had said I was delivering furniture 2 counties away. She said, "I am not asking you whether this is true. I am telling you that I know. What I am asking is how long you watched me suffer for something I did not do." I told her everything, not because I had found courage, but because there was nothing left to hide behind. I told her about Clara, about the visits, about the letters, about the P.O. box. I told her that the bishop's visit had been prompted by Eli's concern about me, not about her. I told her that when the letter arrived, I had redirected the suspicion toward her deliberately. I told her I had comforted her while she cried over a punishment I deserved. Rebecca did not shout. She did not weep. She sat perfectly still and listened to every word, and when I finished, she said, "You let me believe I was going mad. You let my mother question my character. You let the women in this community treat me like a sinner, and you held me while I cried about it." I said yes. She stood up, folded the letter and the receipt and the list into a neat square, placed them inside her Bible, and walked upstairs. I heard the bedroom door close. I slept in the workshop that night, and for many nights after. Rebecca did not leave me. In our district, a woman did not simply leave, but she went to Bishop Graber herself the following Sunday and told him the truth, all of it. She cleared her own name because I had failed to do it. The bishop called me before the church. I confessed publicly I was placed under a 6-week ban. Clara, who had no membership in our district, was beyond the church's reach, but the community knew her name now, and the shame of it was complete. Eli did not speak to me for almost a year. When he finally did, he said only, "I gave you the chance to be the man she thought you were." I had no answer for that. Rebecca and I remained married. We raised our daughters. We sat at the same table, attended the same services, worked the same land. But something had been removed from the center of our household, something I cannot name precisely, a kind of faith, not in God, but in the safety of being known by another person. Rebecca never again trusted me the way she had before the letter arrived. She was not cold, she was not cruel, she was careful. And careful is a terrible thing to watch in a woman who once trusted you without thinking. Clara moved away the following spring. I heard she went to Ohio. I never contacted her again. I wish I could say I ended that relationship out of renewed devotion to Rebecca, but the truth is simpler and uglier. I ended it because I had been caught. I do not know what I would have done if Rebecca had never found that receipt. I am 63 years old now. Rebecca passed away 4 years ago. Miriam, our eldest, asked me once whether I had ever been unfaithful to her mother. She was an adult by then, with children of her own. I told her the truth. She listened the way her mother had listened, still, steady, measuring. When I finished, she said, "Did Mama forgive you?" I said, "She stayed." Miriam shook her head and said, "That is not the same thing, Dad." She was right. Staying is not forgiving. Forgiving is not forgetting. And silence, the silence I kept while my wife absorbed a shame that belonged to me, silence is not peace. It is a debt that collects interest every single day, and you do not stop paying it simply because the person you owed has gone. I still set 2 places at my table every evening. One for me. One for the woman who deserved better than the man sitting across from her. The plate stays clean. The chair stays empty. And I sit with that emptiness, the way Rebecca once sat with mine, without explanation, without announcement, without asking anyone to understand.